So we've got some more clarity as to the Montreal Canadiens and some extra draft support that they will be receiving this year. This is a video about the Calgary Flames and the Montreal Canadiens, and it works here because both of these teams do not play today, so we can make this video a little bit later in the show. Vancouver stuff had to be pushed a little bit earlier because, of course, the Canucks are playing. Same thing could be said about the Detroit Red Wings. But when it comes to the Habs and the Flames, we have to revisit the same topic we had talked about a few weeks ago in discussing the next first-round pick that in which Calgary will be sending over to Montreal. If you didn't see the last video, which is okay because it was from a few weeks ago, we'll refresh everybody's minds in this video because the trade we are referring to was the Sean Monahan trade. Back when Calgary sent Monahan over with a conditional first-round pick to Montreal in August of 2022. So this trade was literally 3 years in the making from the time it was made to the time that we are now starting to see the actual results of the trade. Now, in the last video we had went over all the conditions, there were a bunch of them, but essentially it boils down to this, as explained on Puckpedia.com. The trade is written about here on the website. The Montreal Canadiens acquired Monahan and a conditional first-round pick from the Flames for future considerations, so literally nothing. And the conditions went as follows. As of March 4th, 2025, if both Calgary's 2025 first and Florida's 2025 first are not in the top 10, Montreal receives the earlier of the two picks. If Calgary's 2025 first is top 10 and Florida's 2025 first is not top 10, Montreal receives Florida's 2025 first. If Florida's 2025 first is top 10, which would force it to shift in 2026 as part of the Yakemchuk trade condition, Montreal will receive Calgary's 2025 first, unless that pick is first overall. Then Montreal would receive Calgary's 2025 third, and the better of Calgary and Florida's 2026 first. So because the Calgary Flames were fresh off of the Matthew Tkachuk trade, and they had this first-round pick from Florida that was conditional, and then they had this other trade with Monahan and Montreal that also had a conditional pick, they just kind of intertwined the two and wrapped everything up in a bow here. Just some sort of a jumbled mess of trade conditions and draft pick stipulations. But essentially, Montreal will receive a first-round pick in 2025, because the conditions that would force things over to 2026 are not going to be fulfilled. Florida's 2025 first is not going to be top 10, and Calgary's 2025 first is, barring a lottery win, not going to be first overall. This was explained because of yesterday's Calgary Flames loss. The Flames ended up losing 4-3 in overtime to the Anaheim Ducks, which gives them a very specific point number on the season that we'll dive into right here. Because the Flames lost to Anaheim in overtime, they are at 88 points in 78 games played. Teams above them in the overall NHL standings are the Minnesota Wild, the Blues, the Sens, the Devils, and then you have Calgary. You've got teams underneath them, Montreal, Vancouver, etc., etc., but we really care about the bottom tier here, because Calgary's draft stipulation on the draft pick would be dependent on whether or not their draft pick would be in the top 10 of the draft. That was a crazy sentence, but you get what I mean. This means the Calgary Flames would need to finish in the bottom 10 in order for that pick to go up to the top 10, thus fulfilling the stipulation of Florida's pick going over to Montreal instead and Calgary keeping theirs. Because the Flames got a point, they're at 88 points, but if you take a look at these bottom tier teams, okay, can these remaining teams in the bottom 10, Columbus, New York, Anaheim, Buffalo, can they catch up to Calgary? Well, unfortunately, none of them can. The Columbus Blue Jackets have an opportunity to. They've got 79 points in 77 games played. If they win out, then they will overtake Calgary. But the problem is Columbus is playing off against a bunch of these teams that are in that same range. So if Columbus wins, then some of the other guys would lose, and then if some of the other guys win, then Columbus would lose. All of these teams don't have a chance to catch up to the Calgary Flames, and this tweet from Marco D'Amico goes out there and says it. With the overtime loss, the Flames cannot finish any lower than 22nd overall this season, meaning they will not finish in the bottom 10. Outside of an improbable lottery win, the Montreal Canadiens will retain Calgary's pick, which is currently projected to be at the 16th overall pick in the 2025 NHL Draft. This is, of course, not set in stone just yet. We know Calgary can start losing. We know Montreal, Vancouver, and Utah each have realistic chances of being able to catch Calgary and overtake them, thus pulling Calgary back and potentially putting them in the 14th or 13th overall spot in the 2025 draft. It's just gonna take a miracle for them to slip over into the top 10. I don't think it's really possible at this point. Just for a refresher, let's look at the reverse standings from 10 to 1. So first overall, you're seeing San Jose right now. Second overall, you've got Chicago. Nashville third, Boston fourth, Philadelphia fifth, Seattle sixth, Pittsburgh seventh, Buffalo eighth, Anaheim 9. And then you got the Rangers, the Blue Jackets, and then the Islanders at 10, 11, and 12. This puts that Calgary first-round pick at 16th overall, and it's actually kind of funny because if you look at it, the Montreal Canadiens are currently the lowest standings team that have qualified for the playoffs, or not qualified, they're not clinched yet, but they're in the playoffs right now, thus putting their own first-round pick in the 17th overall spot. So the Habs could very well have back-to-back first-round picks, assuming Calgary's first-round pick does not end up winning a lottery, thus propelling it into the top 10 and giving Montreal Florida's first-round pick instead, which is right now projected to being 22nd overall. But assuming everything just goes the way it is right now, Calgary's first-round pick would go to Montreal at 16, Montreal's first-round pick at 17 will also be there, giving the Habs back-to-back first-rounders in the 2025 draft class. That's a lot of leverage right there. You could definitely use this to either trade up for another pick or get another really interesting piece. We had seen the Canadiens flip first-round picks in the past, from Romanov to the New York Islanders, with the first-round pick getting sent over to Chicago for Kirby Dach. And then you're seeing the Canadiens also getting other first-round talents, like the Newhooks and the Barons recently. So there are a number of options that the team can execute when it comes to using what is essentially a free draft pick that they got for taking on Sean Monahan 3 years ago. The trade should have never happened from the Calgary Flames' point of view. Just when you think about how Sean Monahan has been able to revive his career and have extreme value for the Columbus Blue Jackets and at times the Canadiens and the Winnipeg Jets and all that. He's a fine player. The Flames just did not have it in them to give him that chance to be that one more time. And I guess you could say, with retrospect, it's easy to come to that conclusion, but at the same time, I think back in that time frame, there were still folks going out there and saying like, hey, that's kind of wild to go out there and trade Monahan with a draft pick for nothing. You really just gave up on the guy. One of these players that was really, really highly touted for Calgary all those years ago and who had unfortunately struggled through a bunch of injuries. It's just really fortunate for him to be able to see valuable NHL play out of that body of his again. And from the Calgary Flames' point of view, you know, they didn't end up winning anything in that time frame in which they traded Monahan and the draft pick, so you can debate whether or not it was really worth it for them now, right? So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this trade update with the Calgary Flames and the Montreal Canadiens. It looks like the first-round pick will be 16th overall, and the Habs will receive it, it looks like. So, thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 9 and bye.